So we're really pleased to have John MacDonald with us today, and John is the director of Father Heart Ministries in Scotland. How you doing, John? You all right?
Very well, thank you, Ken. It's lovely to see you again.
It's good to see you. John spoke to us when we were doing the evangelism course, and he's a really interesting kind of character. So I just want to get him to talk to us, particularly about his new book, Made in His Image, which is out now, and particularly about all kinds of stuff to do with gender or race or gender roles and stuff like that. And so you'll be able to listen to what he says, get your questions ready, and listen to his story. But first, a little bit about the man himself, because he's had a very kind of roller coaster type of career. Okay, so I was reading his CV, as you do, and all these kind of stories about the jobs he's done. He's been a headmaster of a primary school and worked in education department. Various things, but I just thought, and jobs as well. Somebody said he'd been a nightclub bouncer, which I suspect was a legend.
No, I ran club nights, but I wasn't the bouncer.
So, John, what's your least favourite job that you can recall?
Oh my goodness! It must be when I left Bible college in 91. I had a 3-month job working at a spice factory.
Oh,
it was a factory that sent spices to all, I mean, the stuff that goes into your meat pies.
Yeah.
It's a wonder I still eat them after working in that place.
Oh, you often find that, don't you? You get kind of put.
That must be the worst job I've had.
What was so bad about that?
But just day after day, hour after hour, just filling bags with different spices or spice mixes.
Okay.
To be dispatched to all of these factories around Britain, and you get home stinking of all of this spice mixture, trying to get it out of your pores.
Well, the fingernails.
Oh yeah,
Old Spice all the time.
That's possibly the most mind-numbing job I've had.
Yes. What about, didn't you work in funeral wholesale or something? Is that right?
Yes, I worked for when I was 17, I think. So that would have been 1978. I worked for a funeral suppliers. The only thing we didn't do was coffins and bodies.
Okay.
We did the rest. The shrouds, the handles for coffins, the plates, the decoration, the silk lining for coffins, all of those things. That was very interesting.
It's hard to think of somebody, I mean, if you work in a trade warehouse, you can imagine rolling up with a truck and saying, I have a half a dozen bags of cement or something like that. But to have a trade warehouse for funeral requisites, I suppose they've got to go somewhere, haven't they?
It was a very small place. There was one storeroom which also served as the kind of main office,
right.
Stealing high stacks of boxes of coffin ornaments, and in the other room were the machinists sewing up all of the materials that necessary. Yeah.
Oh well, the things you do, hey. And then you worked a lot in as you went up the grades through education jobs, and then so you went to Bible college quite early on.
It's my wife who's in education.
Oh, excuse me. Did I get that bit?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no, she's the really smart one.
Get her in here.
I just learned some big words, Ken.
Okay, yeah, I got this here. Egalitarian and misogyny. That's big enough for me. All right, bless you. Okay, so and now you're in Father Heart. So tell us a little bit about what Father Heart means.
Really, it's, for me personally, I came into a place in 2005 when I began to see God from a different perspective and began to understand what Jesus was telling us in the Gospels when he spoke about his Father, our Father, your Father. And I began to see that in a much more personal sense. I think previously I had always seen it out there. He was the Father of Jesus.
Yeah.
But actually, over the last 15 years now, I see him much more as the father of John.
Right, right.
But only because of Jesus. I need to make that important.
Sure. Of course, yeah.
Disclaimer, if you like, because a lot of people think when the revelation of the Father heart means we do away with Jesus, but it's not, because only Jesus can reveal the Father to us. And so without a relationship with Jesus, it's impossible to experience that personal love of the Father, which Jesus prayed for, didn't he? He said, Father, I pray the love with which you've loved me would be in them also.
Yes.
So that has been my journey, and still is my journey.
Good.
Of discovering that aspect of who God is, and realizing that he's very different from the God I was taught growing up in the Catholic Church. Going through the ranks of evangelical churches in different denominations. So I guess it's part of what some people would talk about deconstruction.
Yeah.
Although I don't particularly like that word, because I think what this revelation has done for me is a reconstruction of my perspective of who God is.
Okay.
Now it changes my views of church practice and doctrine and theology, but I don't like the deconstruction word, because I think it's too negative.
Yes.
For me, it's more of a reconstruction of the true picture of my relationship with God.
I suppose when Jesus was asked how should we pray, and he says, "Our Father," he's saying exactly that, isn't he? Straight away, that it's my Father and your Father, our Father. So he's linking in with us, but expressing that reality that kind of changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, for me, I wrote it in my first book, but for me, it was explosive. I'd heard about all of this, but in 1985, and sorry, my apologies, in 2005, I actually heard him call me son. And that took it to a whole new level. For me, teaching the and everything else suddenly became real and personalized. It's like, I'm his son. I'm not the son.
Yeah.
Jesus is uniquely the Son of God.
Sure.
But I'm a son.
Yeah.
Because of what Jesus did.
And I can say, our Father, with my brothers, with my sisters.
Amen. Yeah.
Wonderful. And this goes all over the world, doesn't it? These are.
Yes. We have teams in Asia, in Australia, in Canada, in America, here in Europe. We've made connections in South and Central America as well.
Amen. So let's move on now. Let's talk about the book. Okay. So made in his image, and it's got an interesting cover on it with different faces and genders and races on the front, and it seems very appropriate right now when we're going through almost kind of like crisis, talking about all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, and you brought this book out saying, yeah, of course, right now there's a particular crisis of injustice among the Black lives of North America, but your book is not in answer to any of that. It's just a background to the bigger picture of our Father. I
think injustice runs throughout our cultures, whether it's based on people's color or people's gender, or I don't know whether to say gender or biological sex. That's another whole debate that's going on. But you know what I mean.
Yes. Yes.
I think injustice is injustice. And I guess, as I say in the foreword, that this has been 10 years in the making for me, this book.
Okay.
In 2010, I read the little verse in Genesis chapter 3 where it says, Adam named his wife Eve because she would become mother of all the living. And it struck, I'd read it, I don't know how many times I've read it over the years, Ken, but I suddenly stopped and thought, why did he rename his wife? Previously there were Ish and Isha, man and wife. And suddenly here he steps in and names her. And I say it in the book, but it's almost like he's treating her no different from the animals of the field when he sat and named them. And it's really struck me. And so it began a whole journey of exploration. You know, my mum, I was brought up basically as a single parent. My mum was, through her life, became a women's rights officer in Stirling City Council and various things, which I'd never really paid attention to, because by then I was living away from home on my own, doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. But actually I began to think about it and realised that along with racism, misogyny is just as great, if not a deeper, issue of injustice. And so that was where the book was born from.
Okay, so what would you say was your main motivation for writing it? So you're bringing in your experiences for a decade. So what do you want to say? What's the main motivation for the book coming out?
I want people to understand that, from my perspective, and I really don't want to offend people, but I probably will. Right. From my perspective, the whole thing of complementarianism, women being something second to men, is for me it's heresy, and it's unjust, because we see it running throughout our society, not just in church. And I just wanted to expose it and bring it to light, because it's something that God's been working in my own soul, in my own relationships. I think he does that before he lets you release something. Yeah. He works in you personally.
Yes.
No, and so I was exposed to a lot of my prejudices. If anyone had asked me if I was misogynist or racist even, I would have said no. Mm. But actually, anyone who says they're not misogynistic or not racist is probably lying, because it's so sewn into our cultures and our society that we unconsciously imbibe it, and we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
Until it's shown to us and we suddenly realise, I am that.
Sure.
And so, I mean, the racism thing was something that was exposed to me many, many years ago, decades ago. I had a girlfriend of colour and friends of colour, and what I saw them exposed to really began to open my eyes, through the 70s and the 80s. And so through reading that scripture back in 2010, I became aware that actually there are elements of misogyny in me that made me very uncomfortable to own.
Yeah. Who wants to own that? Yeah, sure. I saw it was a film review. No, it was they were talking to the actors of this film. Okay, Iron Man. That was it. Iron Man. So they were interviewing Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson. Okay, the sort of one of the main male, the main female characters, and they were on the stage there, looking very glamorous. And she's a very beautiful woman. He's very kind of handsome guy, very macho guy. So you have a kind of epitome of a macho guy and a beautiful, sexy woman, like standing. And so they turned to Robert and I have a question for Robert, a question for Scarlett. And he said, oh, yes. And he said, Robert, what about the way your character grew and developed and the existential change? And so he explained it for a moment or two. And then he turned now to Scarlett, how did you get into that costume? So it was kind of, I know this is an unpleasant kind of thing. And she just looked kind of sick. And she said, oh, I had to eat a lot of green food. She said, how come he gets the good questions? But you know why. And you know that that you have to be honest about part of the reason she has achieved her celebrity is because of her looks. But it was such an interesting perspective right in our culture, now, and right where we are now. This sort of, you talk about misogyny, and it's like the objectification of women and putting men in a certain way, women in a certain way. Would you like to comment on that kind of?
Yeah, I think, and I do say this in the book, I think misogyny actually oppresses men as well as women.
Right, good one.
Because femininity is demonized. So effeminate men are ostracized unless they eradicate any sense of femininity in their makeup.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing this whole confusion now with the gender non-conformity.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, whether that's trans or homosexual or lesbian or whatever it is. And so what happens is that people are, I say in the book, sexism defines the roles of men and the roles of women.
Yeah.
And misogyny polices that. So that if someone steps outside of the expected norms of womanhood or the expected norms of manhood, they are society, not just individual people, but society punishes them in such a way to force them back into the expected constraints. Yeah. And so a lot of people are traumatized because they know who they really are inside, but they're not allowed to express that. And I'm not even talking about someone feeling as though they're attracted to men or attracted to women, or just they know that they don't fit that norm.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed to step outside of the norm. Else they suffer, they're teased, they're beaten up, they're ostracized, they're made fun of and ridiculed. And so, although women mainly suffer under misogyny, I don't think men escape its tyranny.
Of course, yeah. Yes, I mean, this whole, the stuff, the Me Too movement in a few years ago, Me Too movement and all the revelations with Harvey Weinstein and Jacob Epstein, things like that, a very unpleasant side of predatory males and a kind of rape culture, and then people
definitely
trying to stand up for it and then becoming, well, you were leading me on. It's really, really complex. And then the whole side of the whole gender issue. Yeah. Tell me, would you like to share a little bit on, in Galatians 3, where it says, in Christ, there is neither male nor female. What is it? Slave nor free, Jew nor Gentile. It's a very powerful thing, isn't it? Would you like to just reflect on that verse for us?
Sure. I'm just going to pull it up here. So that I can...
Yeah, I might have misquoted it a little bit there.
No, that's all right.
So you get it right. Make sure you get it right.
I think you pretty much nailed it there, Ken. I think what he's saying is that faith is not based upon gender, ethnicity, social status, or social class.
Good, yeah.
But we judge our society on those bases. So when Paul says, I no longer look at anyone after the way of the world.
Yes.
That's what he's talking about. He's saying, I don't judge people the way the world judges them, by their class, by their clothes, by their hair, by their gender presentation, by their ethnicity. I see Christ in them. I see what Christ has done in them. I see what Christ has brought them to, and we then become, we are family. And in families, you don't or shouldn't be parceling things out based on, that's my favorite child, that's my least favorite child, because that's she's a girl, so she doesn't get that. And so I think he's talking about that aspect of being a family of God, where God doesn't see us as women and men, or slaves or free, or black or white. He just sees, these are my children, and I care for each of them with the same zeal, the same love.
So this is where we see those things coming together, the Father heart of God coming together with the made in his image. Excuse me interrupting you there.
Yeah, no, that's all right. No, that's fine, Ken. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so that's, I guess that's the perspective I have.
That's wonderful. So let's just move to I suppose the most controversial part of your book, which you said, the femininity of God, which when I read it, whoa, it was, kind of catches you by surprise. Now that you've laid the foundation of it, I obviously see what you're saying, and I've personally found that as I say, really, really challenging, really very, very interesting. So would you like to talk about that? How do you understand that phrase?
Well, God made man and woman in his image. That's what Genesis tells us.
Yes.
He made man in his image, male and female, he made them in his image.
Yeah.
And if the feminine, if the female is made in the image of God, then something in God must be feminine.
Sure.
To be able to breathe that into the woman or whoever, And so when he did that, did he only breathe femininity into the woman and withhold masculine traits?
Yeah.
When he breathed into the man, did he only breathe masculinity into him, or did he withhold everything of femininity from the man?
Right.
And so for me, to be in the image of God is to embrace both of those aspects of personality or character or nature, because he is both. We talk about God is not only this or only that. He's everything all of the time.
Okay.
In which case, he must also be feminine and masculine all of the time.
Yes. Yes, it's obvious, isn't it? Sure.
We see the use of language in the Bible, where he speaks of himself as like a mother bear robbed of her cubs.
Yeah.
Or he says, can a mother forget her baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she's born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. He's putting himself in the place of a mother. He says, in Isaiah, he says, as a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. He's saying, the comfort I give you is the comfort of a mother. And I think it's very interesting when Paul says in 2 Corinthians, he's the God of the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort.
Right.
This compassion and comfort would be seen as feminine characteristics.
Yeah.
And he's saying this is who God is.
Amen. Yeah.
His femininity is a comforting love.
Yes.
And this whole idea of compassion, I say it in the book, in fact, I've got it here. The Hebrew word racham, and it's taken from the root word rachem, which is womb.
Right.
And so the compassion of God is a womb-like tenderness and care that nurtures and protects. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I suppose if you polarize male and female, the way I just did with Robert Downey and Scarlett Johansson, I polarized, extreme examples. But if you sort of just start to speak about humanity is made in the image of God, humanity, and when we use the word he for God, obviously we've got to include he, she, obviously we're not being gender exclusive. It's foolish to think that, it's only a child who would say, oh, God is an old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud. It's a childish perspective, but what you're doing is widening out something that's kind of obvious, but you have to say it before it becomes but it seems very relevant to where we are.
Well,
go on.
We speak about God as a father, and I think for many that's helped to fashion this idea of God as a man.
Yes.
Father is nothing to do with God being male or female.
Sure.
Father is to do with the initiation of life, and not only the initiation of life, but the sustaining of life. Any man can sire a child, biologically, but he's only a father if he continues to input the life within himself into that child.
Good.
Throughout the years of their lives, at various different stages, there are different ways of imparting life, sustaining that life of that child, and enabling them to grow in it. So God is a father in that sense, that he initiates the life within us, and as we walk with him, he continues to impart the life that's within himself, and that life becomes the sustaining force that shapes us, enables us to grow, enables us to be who he created us to be. And so in that sense, he's father. But I guess because that impartation of life is a masculine force.
Right, yes.
And you put that alongside the feminine comfort and compassion. And you have a greater picture of who he is.
Man, that's wonderful. I was just thinking as you were talking of the way Jesus referred to himself as Son of Man, that there were many options for him that were given to him, like Son of God was kind of presented to him, or Son of Israel, theoretically, could have been claimed, Son of Israel. People said Son of David to him, but the one that he consistently claimed for himself was Son of Man, Son of Man. And as you'll know that it, actually in one translation that's translated Son of the Human One. I know he was quoting Ezekiel and other places, but to translate it, Son of the Human One, Son of Humanity, Son of Humanity. It kind of plays into what you were saying. It's
a very interesting one, because we know that Joseph had no input.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's not the son of that man.
Okay. Yes, you're right. Yes.
And I wonder if it's connected to Genesis. Sorry, not to Genesis, to Daniel. You'll see when like the Son of Man coming on the clouds.
The clouds of heaven. Yeah.
That's now you've given me something I have to go and explore, Ken.
Good.
That's really interesting. That's really thought provoking.
Yes. Well, of course, if you emphasized Son of David, you're emphasizing his royal connections. If you emphasized Son of Israel, you're emphasizing his patriotic connections. And if you emphasized all these other things, you're going down that route, But if you emphasize Son of Man, which is the one that he picked for himself, Son of Humanity, then you're going down your route. He's saying, whatever beats in the heart of human beings beats in my heart. That's who I connect myself with. Son of Abraham. There's another one, Son of Abraham.
Yeah.
And he gives it to Zacchaeus because Zacchaeus needs to feel included. But for himself, he said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's what he said to you two are a son of Abraham because the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Isn't that interesting?
That's really good. Yeah. That's a great take.
Well, bless you, mate. This is really wonderful. And
I'm definitely have to go and study that now.
Well, let's just finish off with one more, which is a kind of a really heavy duty one, and it's the practical outcome, and it's the verse that that Paul puts there when he says, "Wives, submit to your husbands." Now, I know, obviously that you have to understand that word "submit," but your book is very strongly egalitarian. It means the concept of working together, being a team, a partnership, which everybody knows.
Sure.
Who spent 20 minutes with a woman. We're gonna work together, or we're not gonna. It's not gonna work at all. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's the interesting thing. I think that's the interesting thing. Femininity, and therefore women, are much more collegiate in their working.
Okay.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
I look at my wife's leadership style. I have learned so much because she's so collegiate.
Right.
If she has to make hard decisions, she makes them. And it doesn't always make her popular. But in reaching her conclusions and her decisions, she will include people's opinions and thoughts. And generally speaking, strong masculinity doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Strong masculinity has an opinion, and that's it.
Yes.
Regardless, I don't care what you say, I've made my mind up.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that to me is a really interesting aspect of feminine characteristics, the collegiate way of working.
Yes.
And as we look at submission, to me it's summed up in that. This hupotasso, this means of cooperation, of bearing burdens together, of living in such a way that enables harmony to be produced in a relationship, in a society, in an organization. Really, it's
which is there in the text as well. That's there in Paul's text, isn't it?
Yes.
Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Yeah.
And I think the verse we always refer to in Ephesians 5, is it 23? I think. Wives, submit to your husbands. but it's preceded
Yeah.
by verse 21, which says, submit to one another.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, what it's saying is, wives, submit to your own husbands. And that's repeated elsewhere.
Right.
So it's saying, you're not called to get into all of these different things. Just work with your husband.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think that Paul, and especially Peter, is writing in the context of, you see, Christianity in Roman culture and Greek culture was considered to be atheism, because it was a departure from the Roman gods.
Yeah.
And it was perplexing behavior to Romans, seriously perplexing. And they saw it as a revolt, as a revolution. And so what Paul and Peter are saying is, listen, guys, you need believing women with your unbelieving husbands, you need to understand that the damage you're doing to the gospel and to the church's reputation by your rebelliousness within the marriage. Yes, I understand that your husband doesn't want this and doesn't want that, but work with him, cooperate with him, work it out together.
So within the context of that culture, Paul was speaking a new level of liberation and an amazing level of freedom. Now it's used to tout almost the opposite, isn't it? Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember being in the car once, Ken, and being frustrated by the guy in front of me driving at 30 in a 60 zone. I was like, oh Lord, this is so frustrating. You know what I mean? He said, no, John, I don't. It was like a bolt of lightning. I was like, oh my goodness. No, you don't, do you? He says, no, John, and neither should you, because you know better.
Okay.
And I think this is what Paul was saying to the believers here, saying, guys, cooperate because you know better.
Okay.
You understand.
Yes. Yeah.
The long-term, eternal effect of cooperation, of shouldering burdens together, of walking the same path in unity and in harmony.
Yes.
But I think there is a great burden upon men to love their wives in that.
Sure.
And mutual submission. I don't think you can love your wife properly unless you're mutually submitted.
No.
And if you've lived any length of time with your wife, you know that. You know the disharmony and the resentment that can be created by being dictatorial and authoritarian.
Sure.
And the pain and the damage it causes emotionally.
Just a bit of context here. Did you get your silver wedding anniversary? Was that right?
That was a few years ago.
Little while back. So all I'm saying by that is that you're in a position to make that statement. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah. This year we're coming up to 34 years married.
34 years. Okay. Yeah.
I know I don't look it.
No, gosh, no, just a young whippersnapper. All right. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us, John. And
also a pleasure to chat to you, Ken.
Would you like to just hold that book out? Just have you got it right in front of you there? Here's the one we want.
We have a copy here.
Okay, come on. Here we go. Just
so, reading his image.
Just hold it up. There you go. It's really important, this, guys. This is a real word for our time, because John is addressing not just racism and sexism, but he's addressing it with a heart after the Father. It's really, really significant that we hear this whole thing, because we have to be part of this debate, or it'll just carry on over there and it will be defined by the world. We need this debate to be defined and understood by thinking Christians. That's the point.
Can I just say one last thing, Ken?
Yep.
I think we look at the racism and we look at the complementarianism and think it's an American issue. But actually, from my experience, it's a world issue.
Yeah.
Both the misogynistic culture and the racist cultures of all of our societies, they're woven into the very fabric. And we can make a mistake in thinking it's over there.
Yeah, it's here.
And I think for me, I've realised it's not over there. It's not even here. It's here.
It's here.
It's in me.
Good word.
And that's where the battle begins, I think.
Okay. Thanks, John.